Okay, we are live now. Yeah, we are. So this is Princess Steps Fall 2023. It's week 3, and the topic tonight is using heart rate and effort as your exercise guideline. And yes, I have a sweatshirt on because we're in an air-conditioned room, and I know it's not that cold in here, but I've been in here most of the day. So when I go outside, and thank you to everyone that's here, and thank you to all of you out there in the internet world watching us live. We really appreciate you tuning in. As John starts to talk, I am going to monitor this, so if anybody out there has questions, don't hesitate to let me know. And if you check in, I will let you put your star up next week, or I'll put it up for you. Just let me know if you check in that you're watching, tuning in virtually. So with that, I just want to say, again, thank you to everyone who is here, because it's so hot and the air quality is we're very compromised, especially if you have pre-existing conditions like asthma or other medical things. Your heart rate is going to go up. And so even though today we were going to be taking heart rate checks out there, I'm not going to hold the leaders to doing that today, because we know your heart rate's going to be way high because of the heat and possibly the air quality as well. It just went through?
No, it improved.
What?
It's down to 99.
Oh, it improved. It's down to 99. Okay. Right. The temperature or the air quality?
Air quality.
Okay, whatever. Okay, John's going to talk a lot more in depth about using heart rate and effort as your exercise guideline. Today, at least it's not red skies like it had been a couple years ago. And so that said, just take it easy tonight. Your leaders have already been tuned in. You know, if you're in a walk group, walk slow. If you're in a walk-run transition group, feel free to take extra walk breaks. And if you're in a run group and you're just not feeling it, feel free to walk and take jog breaks, or do whatever you feel is necessary. Spend whatever time you need, and keep an eye out on one another in reference to the information that I did post regarding heat disease. So keep an eye on one another from that perspective, and know that we can feel good that tomorrow, according to the forecast, is the last day for this extreme heat, and it's going to go back down. So again, thank you for being here, and come on up. John's going to talk about using heart rate and effort. And again, yeah, we can do a quick practice right now. Everybody get your heart rate right now, and those of you out there tuning in can also get your heart rate. Ready, and count. Stop. That was exactly 6 seconds. So whatever number you got, just remember that for a second, for a moment. Remember that. And I'm going to have you kind of pretend like you're hyperventilating, or just get excited about something. Yeah? Okay, you can even stand up, maybe move around a little bit. Just get going. There you go. You got it. Okay, keep going. And just move around, dance around. And okay, get ready, your heart rate again. Ready, and count. Stop. Okay, now, how many people, their heart rate after they got up and moved was higher? It probably was for just about everybody, a little bit higher, okay? That's normal. There's other things that are going to raise your heart rate, and John's going to talk more about that. So not tonight, but next week, the leaders are going to be having you take your heart rate out there 3 times. Once in the warm-up, once in the middle part, and once in the cool-down. And the whole premise of this, or part of this clinic, is to teach you effort. Remember, we've talked about form, princess steps, and we talk about conversation pace, and too much, too soon, too fast. The reason why most people start an exercise program and then quit before they hit their goals is they're trying to do too much, too soon, too fast. And monitoring your effort and your heart rate, making sure you're truly easy in the warm-up, comfortable in the middle part, and easy in the cool down is what's going to help you sustain your effort over the long haul and keep on going, because you're not going to feel like yuck. Okay? The reason why people quit is they feel like yuck because they're trying to do too much, too soon, too fast. Now? Okay.
Okay, weather and air quality update. The temperature has dropped to 101. And the air quality is 99, where it was a few hours ago like 136. So there might be a breeze out there. That'd be nice. Happy heart. People out there, okay? Let's start with this concept here of a happy running heart. I did kind of a little bit of history on things in terms of exercising using heart rate as a guideline. Back before the store even opened, early 90s, mid 90s, when we began the business, it was called Gallagher Fitness Resources. We didn't sell any shoes, but we coached a lot of people. We had training programs for marathon, half marathon, 5K, 10K. I used to go to Sprague High School every Wednesday from like 3:30 to 7 p.m. and people would just show up. This was after school, after the track team were done or the cross country teams were done, and we just would train people. And this is 93, 94, 1993, 94, like 30 years ago. That wasn't 30 years ago, was it? We got an agreement, we kind of had an arrangement with Polar heart rate monitors. And like the earliest Polar heart rate monitors that were kind of chunky and had the straps, and we used those when Susan and I were training people, and kind of taught people back 30 years ago that, using your heart rate, figuring out kind of where you're at, where your zones are. So we've been doing this for 3 decades now. A lot of things have changed. I mean, it used to be if you wanted to exercise and keep an eye on your heart rate, you had to wear a bulky strap. You had to lick it and make sure that you were sweating enough. If you were sweating too much, it didn't work as well. It was kind of a little bit of a wonky, effective technology, but it did have issues. Okay. Now, how many people have an Apple Watch? How many people have Fitbits? How many people whose kids are kind of growing up knowing what their heart rate is? It's just amazing. The last week's talk about shoes and just how much the technology has changed and progressed. I mean, just think about knowing what your heart rate is. And then the stuff that's coming out in the next 2 to 3 to 5 years, it's going to tell you all kinds of things. It's the old Dick Tracy watch, that gives you all this information, where they're really seriously looking into a lot more medical applications for something you wear on your wrist. So the concept of exercising using your heart rate in those zones. How many have taken classes, aerobics classes, or classes at the gym, where they get the chart up there and there's the target zone that you're supposed to be in? That's this whole concept. A lot of it got started in the 50s and 60s. In the mid-late 60s, the Cooper Clinic was down in Texas, more so training military for endurance. Okay, there was a lot of research that was being taken place that, especially Air Force pilots doing super long flights. We needed, the military needed to develop a better way so that they could have more endurance. That's where a lot of the research started. And then in the 50s and 60s, track coaches like Arthur Lydiard, like Bill Bowerman, Percy Cerruti in Australia. A lot of these kind of, at the time, in the late 50s, early 60s, kind of eccentric, goofy, crazy track coaches started really honing in on making sure that their athletes are recovering. Push them, make them run hard, but make sure they recover. Doing easy runs, easy jogs. That was unheard of when people were trying to, the 4-minute mile had been broken, but people wanted to get it down below there. In the early 60s, less than 100 people had broken the 4-minute mile worldwide. Now we have high school kids breaking the 4-minute mile, okay? So amazing things have happened along with figuring out how our bodies adapt to training, how our bodies recover from training, and how we progress through that, okay? And heart rate has a ton to do with it, and those target zones. So everybody got their slips? Okay, let's take a peek at those to begin with. Okay.
You can, if you didn't get it, you can go grab it just for referencing this, and then you can either take it with you tonight or put it back up there because we're going to need it next week.
Okay. What they didn't have them?
Well, just because we weren't necessarily going to.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's part of the problem.
But yeah, you're right. I didn't think about that.
Okay, so on those slips are the range of kind of your aerobic to your anaerobic range. Okay, aerobic means with oxygen, all right? And aerobics classes were, low impact, low, not low effort, because they went into some extreme effort. But the original aerobics classes that kind of came out with, Jane Fonda and the leg warmers, and, in the 70s and early 80s, that was kind of this concept of build up, warm up, work hard, and kind of the interval, off and on, get your heart rate up, get your heart rate down, get your heart rate up, get your heart rate down. What that does is creates aerobic fitness, okay? So in those slips, you've got, I think it starts with 60% up to 85%. And at 85%, you got the red box at the end, okay? The simple formulas for maximum heart rate is you take the number 220, you subtract your age. So if you're 40, your maximum heart rate is 180, 220 minus 40, 180. If you're 60, 220 minus 60 is 160, okay? If you're 30, you can do the math. So, wait a minute. If I'm 30 versus 40, I get 10 more beats, okay? The reason is, as we age, the heart is a muscle, just like everything else, you do kind of lose a beat, all right? People who have remained aerobically fit, or the actual medical technology, technical term of this is chronically fit, okay? Anybody here want to be chronically fit? Okay? If you're chronically fit, you may not lose those extra beats as you age, okay? So the simple test, especially for a beginning level class like the Princess Steps tends to be, doing that 220 minus your age. So let's do 220 minus 60 is 160. 160 would be that maximum heart rate, okay? What's maximum heart rate? Does it mean that you're going along, you're walking, you're running, you're going upstairs, you're hiking up a trail or something. Oh, I'm at 160. It doesn't mean that the next step is going to be your last step, okay? Because you've hit your maximum. The maximum heart rate, and the way the maximum heart rate works, is pretty much you can hold your maximum for about 10 to 12 minutes, okay? It's not going to be pretty when you're done, but it's also not going to kill you, all right? So maximum heart rate, that 100% of maximum, that is like your, by the end of the 8 or 10 minutes, your eyes are bulging, your ears are steaming, you're sweating like crazy. You have worked as hard as your body and your heart and lungs can produce oxygen and blood flow, okay? So understanding what maximum heart rate is, it's pretty much that maximum effort that you can hold for about 10 minutes. Hence, the mistake a lot of newer exercisers, newer people to walking, running, bicycling, doing trails, doing, more endurance-based activities, they get into trouble because, well, things are going great, 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 I can get to the top of that hill, okay? And you've kind of worked through that zone of being at 60%, to 70%, to 80%, to 90%, and you're up at that max 100%, okay? So we've got that red line starting at 85%, because between 85 and 100, you can red line pretty fast, okay? Like in your car, if the air conditioner's not working so well, things heat up pretty quickly, okay? Or the radiator's down a little bit low on water, things are gonna, once they start getting warm, they get warm really fast, okay? So same thing goes with getting up into those maximum zones on your heart rate. So fitness, aerobic fitness is your first stage of building a fitness program, okay? What happens during building up of aerobic fitness? Well, if you stay aerobic, if you stay in that 60 to 75% range, don't really exceed it too much, you're burning fuels. You're actually creating a better plumbing system for your cardiovascular system, okay? We all have one heart, right? And that one heart has two auricles, two ventricles, arteries blood leaves the heart through the arteries, blood returns through the veins, okay? Everybody has about the same, within one or two arteries, all the major arteries of the body, and everybody has major veins, okay? We're all God-given those tools, that plumbing part. What you can build, and what aerobic conditioning does, is creates more exchange points in your muscles, okay? So blood leaves the heart, moves out to the body, to the organs, to your working blood, to your working muscles cells, through the arteries. The blood that's been used returns, circulatory system returns, and it's cleaned through your liver, through your lungs, and then pumps back out again, all right? The exchange points are called capillaries, and they're tiny little microscopic places where a vein or an artery ends and a vein begins, okay? So those exchange points, those can be engorged with aerobic exercise. So same amount of arteries, same amount of veins, but the exchange points can go from just a couple of real thin microscopic spots to building, okay? Because they're microscopic and they're tiny, you can have hundreds and hundreds and thousands of capillaries that you can create through aerobic exercise, okay? Doing that, that's like I say, you're building the better plumbing system, okay? You're getting that blood out to the working muscles. You're getting that blood returned through your lungs, through your heart, through your liver, keeping everything cleaned and cleansed, all right? Where things start building up in exercise is when you get to be anaerobic, okay, meaning without oxygen. The conversation phase is the perfect way to figure out when you're exceeding your aerobic zone, okay? Because if you're out there and you're not really getting out every word of the sentence, you have crossed into your anaerobic zone, okay? There's not enough oxygen moving for you to continue your exercise level. So on your slips of paper, that's where you're going into 80, 85, 90%. There's a cost to that. If you stay aerobic, you can keep the conversation going. You can keep the exercise going. The fatigue level isn't increasing very quickly. You're not building up lactic acid and different byproducts in your bloodstream from exercise, okay? When you go anaerobic and you start the huffing and puffing, you can't complete your sentences and conversations get more difficult or silent and you're sweating like crazy, okay? That's when you are pushing yourself, okay? And I'll get to this in a second. You are pushing yourself, but too much of that too soon, too quickly leads to injuries because you're not building that capillary system and all those exchange points to build your endurance, okay? So building endurance is the most important thing. If you think like a pyramid, okay, the bottom is your endurance base. You want that wide, broad, and have lots of it, okay? Building a house on a hill or something like that. You want to have a solid foundation. Aerobic fitness is what builds that absolutely solid foundation. From there, then you add your next stage, which is that anaerobic conditioning, which are the days, the workouts that Susan has on your slips and what you'll see in the homework in the upcoming weeks.
Well, it's really more strength. We're not getting anaerobic yet.
Well, no, but you're getting to that edge. So you're actually pushing your pace a little bit, getting up a little bit higher into that zone, hopefully not getting into 85, 90%, but pushing it from 55, 60, 65% up more closer to 80%, okay? That's where you start that anaerobic conditioning. In anaerobic conditioning, you're actually starting to build muscle cells because you're pushing yourself, okay? The big thing in all the gyms in the 80s and 90s, no pain, no gain, right? Well, no pain, there's lots of gain. There's an awful lot of gain if you're keeping things comfortable, easy, and aerobic. Your gain is enormous endurance, okay? You can go all day. You can get on your bike and instead of riding 3 or 4 miles around the neighborhood, you can start going 10, 15, 20 miles. Instead of just doing a partial 1 mile or 2 mile hike up at Silver Falls, you can take on the whole waterfall route. Okay, that kind of endurance is what comes from aerobic conditioning, keeping that heart rate low, keeping in the zone. Okay, the second stage, that muscle building, once you have that aerobic base, then you start pushing it. Hey, you know what? We're going to go up that hill a little bit quicker. We're going to, get the pace up just a little bit. We're going to start pushing things a little. I coached high school track and cross country for a number of years before we opened the store. You know, you can do amazing things with 16 to 18-year-olds. They recover in one 12-hour zonk out sleep. They can recover from a lot of stuff. Okay, we, you know, don't have that luxury of zonking out for 12 hours and opening the refrigerator and emptying it, right? And if you've had teenagers, you know what I'm talking about. That's their bodies going and going and going, and they can recover quickly. Yes?
5 minutes.
Okay. So the next part is that aerobic, so that's the strength conditioning, the middle part. The third part is actual musculoskeletal, joints, tendons, ligaments, the connective tissues, okay? If you overdo it, and if you've overdone it in classes or things like that, what hurts? It's your joints, okay? The connective tissue, your knees, your hips, your lower back, your ankles, okay? The things that we're trying to get stronger are the muscles, but it's the connective tissues that get beat up in the process, okay? Your muscles are flexible. They work back and forth, okay? But they pull on the tendons and the connective tissues. So if the muscles aren't getting fed, they're not getting that blood, that oxygen, those capillaries, beds haven't been built, the plumbing system isn't really operating, and all those muscles aren't getting fed, they start tugging on those connective tissues, tugging on the joints, tugging on the cartilage, the ligaments, the things that make you sore, okay? The knees, the ankles, hips, things like that. So keeping it in that aerobic zone for as long as you can, you know, building the endurance first, then start building muscle through repetitive exercise. Then that leads in about 12 to 20 weeks, building up the connective tissues, having your joints more pliable, okay? Because there's some blood flow into cartilage, but not a lot. Tons of blood flow into your muscles, okay? Things that raise your heart rate. Susan mentioned at the beginning. Hot days, dehydration, okay? Yeah, it's great to have a really comfortable air-conditioned office, air-conditioned home, air-conditioned car, air-conditioned everything. You know how air conditioning works? By sucking moisture out of the air, okay? So being in air conditioning all the time will dehydrate you if you're not drinking while you're cooling off in a very comfortable place. So that's the thing about summers that you got to be really aware of, that you're actually dehydrating yourself by remaining comfortable. So when you get out there to exercise, your body's going to start working a lot harder, heart rate's going to rise, and exercise is going to feel a little harder, and you're going to feel a little more sluggish. Because when you do get a little bit dehydrated, the blood flow, there's a little less viscosity in your blood, in your arteries and veins, so the blood isn't moving as smoothly, okay? So that's where hydration really comes into play, and that'll help keep that heart rate in the right zones.
Other things that raise your heart rate.
Other things that raise your heart rate or maintain your heart rate or change your heart rate, there's all kinds of medications out there. I'm not going to go in, I'm not a pharmacist. There's all kinds of things. And those, if you're taking anything or have been prescribed anything, stay in touch with your doctor, your nurse practitioner, you know, whoever your medical provider is about, hey, I'm on this exercise program, the Princess Steps is great, I'm doing all this stuff on Tuesday nights, and I got all these girlfriends I'm doing things with on other days. How does this medicine, these prescriptions affect my exercising? You know, stay in touch with somebody if you're on anything like that. Other things that raise it, stress. Okay. Thankfully, we've had a little less of that in the last year compared to the 2 years prior. But there's a lot of things, a lot of stressors that, if you're constantly under that fight or flight mode, your adrenaline's going all the time, that's going to keep your heart rate higher. I talked about maximum heart rate. The other thing is, you're building aerobic endurance when your resting heart rate starts dropping. Okay? If your resting heart rate is, the average person, they say is 70 to 72 beats a minute. If you go into the doctor's office or you go for your checkup and your heart rate is like 55, and they look at you and go, "Do you exercise a lot?" That's a chronically fit person. Okay? You want to have that. If that lower the heart rate is, that resting heart rate, the more available beats you have while you're exercising. Okay, if you're starting at 72 and your max is 160 or 165, you don't have as many beats there, right? If your resting heart rate is, in the high 40s or mid 50s, you still got, you got like 90 to 100 beats in order to exercise in. So keep an eye on that. If you start seeing your resting heart rate lowering, that's a good sign that your aerobic fitness is building. Okay.
Questions?
Any questions that came in?
I do have a question. Okay, I'm not a fat person, but I was listening to this podcast and they were talking about nose breathing, like when you're exercising. Why are they? I can't all the time. I can't. But why are they saying we should be nose breathing?
I've seen so many articles over the years about.
You might repeat the question.
About nose breathing to be for exercise for more efficiency. I'm assuming was what the podcast was about. There's all kinds of articles that have been written, and I had a coach tell me, I don't know, when I was 21 years old, you need oxygen when you're exercising. Breathe through your mouth, breathe through your nose. If you can figure out how to breathe through your ears, do that.
I just read a whole book on that. It's called Breath. And it's all about, if you're into it, it's an audio book too, and it's all about all these different experiments about breathing and what the different exercise physiology. And I think the punchline was, it's a combination. You don't just do your nose, you don't just do your mouth. You need to do both. And they did studies, and they taped up people's mouths, so basically they couldn't do anything through their nose, and they did stuff where they were just through their mouth. And the punchline was do both.
Mm-hmm.
So that is consistent with what John said.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the main thing is learn, it's not so much your nose or your mouth, it's learning how your diaphragm actually works. And the deeper your breaths can be, and the more relaxed they can be, and when Susan said, let's raise the heart rate by, okay, if you're just breathing from here to here, you're not getting much oxygen. But if you're breathing way down here, and that diaphragm is moving your lungs up and down, that's really where efficient breathing and maximal oxygen uptake comes from, is learning how to really get all that air working.
Any other questions? Any questions? Any questions from out there? I don't see any questions here. But 8 people are tuning in. So good job for the 8 people that are tuning in. Yeah. Okay. Anything else you want to summarize with?
That's pretty good.
Okay,
there's other things. When I do the injury talk in a few more weeks, I'll come back and touch on some of this stuff.
Right. Good job. So just to reiterate, if in doubt, be conservative. Take it easy out there. Thank goodness there's only one more day of this. Again, thank you so much for being out here, and be safe, hydrate, and we'll see you next week for Rolling Out with Trigger Point.